to have the future President of the United States speak to us. Again, I stress I don't have any information, but I will say we're enthusiastically excited about having Senator Pompeo tonight, and we're very grateful for his time.
And thanks for that very kind introduction. It always reminds me when I am introduced as the 70th Secretary of State that Donald Trump was the 45th president, so there was a lot more turnover in my job than his. But I made it. I made it all 4 years. Thank you, Chairman Hare, for gathering everybody here tonight. This is a very special evening for the state of Maryland, for the Republican Party of the state of Maryland, and for those of us who believe in freedom and liberty. Thank you all for giving me the chance to be here. I thought it's great to be in a casino, by the way. How about that? You should know that Italian, right? We've been kicked out of a lot of casinos in New Jersey. I thought I'd start tonight with the questions that I am most often asked, and just knock that out before I get into the formal part of my remarks. First of all, I am now the record holder for spending time with Chairman Kim, having surpassed Dennis Rodman on my third trip to Pyongyang. Second most frequently asked question is, have I seen the UFO files as the CIA director? I have, and I can't say a darn thing about them to you. But my son, the only thing my son asked me was, he said, Dad, when I became CIA director, he says, okay, Dad, you're finally cool. And I want you to read those files, if you could just nod or wink at me. And then lastly, you all won't remember this, it's been a few years, but I am still not completely over the fact that you took my home basketball team, my wife's alma mater, Wichita State's basketball coach at for the Terrapins, Mark Turgeon. Yeah. In Wichita, we are still not over that. Look, I know, Maryland is a tough state for Republicans, but I know this too. It's going to be a good year in 2022. I don't believe for 1 second Maryland is going to be an exception to that rule. You have great conservative candidates running all across the state. I've had a chance to meet a handful of them this evening, and I want to applaud each and every one of them putting themselves forward on behalf of the good people of Maryland to deliver conservative values to this important place. So thank each of you for doing that. I don't know if you saw in the past couple of weeks, the Washington Post said that I was a, quote, self-righteous hypocrite. This was fast on the heels of them having said about, I guess it's almost a year ago now, saying that I was the worst Secretary of State in history. It's kind of funny, isn't it? New York Times, the very next day, you can tell how coordinated the left media is, the very next day the New York Times, Thomas Friedman had a big headline, Mike Pompeo, worst Secretary of State in history. My son called me that morning and said, Dad, have you seen the article? And I said, yes, son, I saw it. He said, I was looking, Dad, and there's this fellow named Elihu Washburn. He was the Secretary of State, and he only lasted 11 days. Surely you're better than him. We started a club called We're Number 2. And having watched the tragedy in Afghanistan these last weeks, I think I'm at least third from the bottom. You kind of have to laugh at the media if you're going to serve in public life these days. I was talking to Andy a second ago about this, Congressman Harris. You kind of have to laugh at them, right? And they are part and parcel of the Democrat Party. They're the party of Governor Cuomo and Bill Clinton and Hunter Biden, the whole gang. Right? They defend people who have engaged in activities that are indefensible. And they attack those of us who understand America and its founding traditions in the most deep and fundamental ways. We have to do better. We have to make sure that we get our young people out working hard in that space. to make sure that our voices are heard, and I'll talk more about that too. You know, it's been almost exactly 8 months since I walked out of the State Department for the last time as the Secretary of State. A couple folks said tonight, they said, I'll bet you're glad you're out of the pressure cooker. They say, you look good. The truth is, I wish I was still there. Not only because I think that we had the right end of the stick on so many of the projects that President Trump and I were working on together, but because it was an incredible privilege each and every day to serve in the job that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison had. You all will think my son's quite a comedian. We were walking down the main hallway at the State Department. On the walls are the portraits of every previous Secretary of State, and I was heading to be sworn in. My wife and my son and I were headed to the podium on what was a special day for our family. And my son sees them, and he sees all these amazing names, Webster, Madison, Jefferson, Pompeo. I don't think so, Dad. Right? And the truth is, and this is my point, while you'll never be Thomas Jefferson, and you'll never be these great Americans, they inspire us all. They provide the guiding light for us all. And I do that every day. President Trump called me in early January after the election, and he said, "My Mike," as he always started, "My Mike, the Washington Post says you were my most loyal cabinet member." I said, "Mr. President, I hadn't seen that. That's awesome. I don't think they meant it as a compliment." So it is great to be with a supportive crowd tonight, people who care about America in the same way that we all do. It seems like a little bit ago now, so much has happened in these 8 months. I'm proud of the things that we worked on. I thought I'd spend just a moment reminding us all of the things that can be done when you are real about securing American freedom. And look, they are on the cusp of trying to pass the largest spending bill in the history of civilization. $3.5 trillion. Never. You can go back to Mesopotamia, inflation adjusted. No one has ever transferred this much wealth in a single stroke. I am hanging on to Kirsten Sinema and Senator Manchin for dear life, because it will be fundamentally changing our nation. I don't think you all are going to let this happen. Remember, we were the barbarians in the gate. We were going to tear down all of the country's biggest institutions. These are the people that want to get rid of the filibuster. These are the people who are trying to pack the Supreme Court. These are people who fundamentally have given up at securing America's borders. So you all should know, and you should feel confident when you're at the water cooler, wherever you find yourselves, you should feel confident that we have it right. So, you know, what did we get done? We began with a central thesis, which was that while America is very powerful and has the capability to do great things across the world, we should be humble and we should be proud. And President Trump never sent me to any country, and he sent me to a bunch of them. I met with the worst of the worst. I met with the Taliban, I met with Chairman Kim, I met with Vladimir Putin. We didn't apologize to a one of them. Just this week, we saw the Democrats show their true colors with respect to how they think about America and its great partner in the Middle East, Israel. Right? We saw that this party has been taken over by a progressive wing that used to be a minority, but that now owns the control of the heartbeat of the Democrat Party. We've seen the videos just in the last days from what's going on at our southern border. And we've seen Al Sharpton and Congresswoman Waters go to the southern border and talk about how defending our southern border is somehow racist. We know that's wrong. We must defend it. We must stay strong. As I remind everyone, it is not always easy to speak the truth. It is imperative that each and every one of us do it. It seems like a long time ago, but we had the lowest unemployment rate for every major subgroup of Americans. The lowest unemployment rate for Hispanics, for African Americans, for women, for Asian Americans in the history of the United States of America. We put people back to work and we rewarded hard work. The Democrats want to head a fundamentally different direction. They have since at least the 1960s, and it is absolutely necessary that in November of 2022, we are successful in making sure that they get no further than they already have. I spent a lot of time, too, trying to make sure that your sons and daughters didn't have to go do hard things in difficult places when they decided to serve America in uniform. I reminded my team at the State Department and when I was CI director every day, if we get it wrong, we increase the chances that some young man or woman in America who said, I want to be a Marine, or I want to be a soldier, I want to be a naval aviator, that they'll have to go exercise the skills for which they've been trained. And I want them to be ready. I want them to fight our wars. Frankly, I don't want them to be politically correct. I want them to be vicious and tough and capable. But my task was to make sure that they were trained and ready and sitting in the barracks, right? Not taking their own lives at risk. We saw President Trump campaigned on this. He wanted to get America involved in fewer places. We were successful at securing American freedom, but didn't enter into a single new conflict anywhere in the world for the entire 4 years. We are so proud of that. I remember too, I was the CI director at the time, and President Trump had campaigned hard on his support for Israel. I remember we were talking about whether we would move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the rightful capital that recognized for the Jewish homeland. And I remember the debate. Sir, if you do that, there'll be war. And then we did it. There was no war. I remember too when the president said to me, we were talking about something, and he said, this Golan Heights, it's really important to Israel. We should just simply state the fact that this belongs to Israel, that they're not occupying that space. And of course the community, the intelligence world all said, and the Democrats and the Washington DC establishment said there'll be war. Well, we did it and there was no war. And then at the end of 2019, at the very end of 2019, I briefed the president on an opportunity. We knew that to put the Middle East in a more stable, more prosperous place, that there was a man who had killed over 500 Americans, who was intent on doing it again, was actively engaged in an effort to kill more Americans. His name was General Qasem Soleimani. We briefed the president and said, Mr. President, we think we have a chance to make sure that he never kills another American. And the world told us if you do that, there'll be war. Qasem Soleimani will never kill another American, and we did not go to war. I remember the president's last words when I was briefing him. I said, Mr. President, you should know that to do this is going to be we're going to take a strike at a commercial airport in Baghdad with a Hellfire missile, and we've not done that before. He looked at me and said, you're sure, right? We can do this? And of course, it was a Department of Defense operation, but we had worked hard, and the military is awesome. And they executed that mission with all the precision and all the excellence and all the power that you all have helped America bring to bear. And we are safer for that. Within about a minute of the time that I was no longer the Secretary of State, the Chinese Communist Party sanctioned me. They sanctioned my family too. In fact, a couple hours after the sanctions were announced by the Chinese and one of the Chinese Communist Party, one of their, I think it was the Global Times or the South China Morning Post, one of the communist propaganda rags. It might have been CNN. In any event, my son is engaged. His fiance's name is Rachel, and Rachel calls me on my cell phone and says, Mr. Pompeo, am I marrying into the sanctions regime? Yes, Rachel, welcome. Go to Beijing before the wedding. We were serious about this greatest threat to the United States. The Chinese Communist Party is intent on doing harm to the people of Maryland, to the people of Kansas, my home state, and to all of us. They want to undermine our way of life, the things that matter most to us. The Chinese Communist Party wants to take away. Maryland was involved in some of this work. There was a Saturday in January, I think, or maybe it was February of 2020. I called Governor Hogan, who was the then leader of the Governors Association, the National Governors Association. I asked him for 20 minutes to speak to all the governors. And I think he thought I was nuts. Why does the Secretary of State want to come talk on a Saturday afternoon to a bunch of governors? But it makes my point. I briefed them. I stood in front of them. There were 40-something of them in the room. And they weren't paying much attention, to be honest with you. It's another one of the speeches. And I said, you know, I managed to get declassified a document. This document is a Chinese Communist Party military document. And what it does is it rates every governor in the United States on how loyal they are to China. I had everyone's attention. Magic. Every one of them texting their chief of staff, get me a copy now. Right, it had rated our governors, friend, foe, or we're working on them. And I mention that because they are working here inside of our country too. We had to close the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas, because they were stealing secrets from our energy industry and from our technical community, our medical community in Texas. This is serious business. This isn't political. No president before President Trump, Democrat or Republican, had confronted the challenge from the Chinese Communist Party. But we began to defend American security in a way that will prevent the Chinese Communist Party from having control of countries all around the world. We had some simple ideas too, some simple things you all know, right? We were for the police, we were for people having guns, pretty straightforward stuff. We were protecting the unborn every place and always. I am convinced we were the most pro-life administration in history. I worked on as the Secretary of State too. You should know, and now that the Biden administration is in charge, that your taxpayer money is almost certainly going to organizations around the world that the State Department is permitting to get your money, that are informing women on how to proceed with abortions. It's absolutely tragic that taxpayer funding would go to such a thing. We stopped it. It's called the Mexico City policy. We had it right. We know life, liberty, and justice, and we know that life is at the very, very center of that. So I know this too. Look, this has been a long 8 months for me too. We have seen them upend nearly every one of the policies that we put in place. I spoke about the Middle East. They're going back to the same tired coddling of extremists. They lifted a terror designation on a group of Iranian-sponsored terrorists in Yemen. Within weeks of the time we left, the Iranians were firing missiles from the Gaza Strip into Israel. The Abraham Accords, the historic set of understandings where four nations, great leaders in the Emirates, in Bahrain, in Sudan, and Morocco, all said, we don't want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. We want to be their friend and partner and ally. They're undermining the very things that enabled those leaders to make those important decisions for peace and stability in the Middle East, that reduces the risk that our kids will have to go and fight there and risk their lives one day. We're in an era of relentless diplomacy. I only wish it were so. But rather than relentless, I prefer to be capable diplomacy. We all watched the unfolding in Afghanistan. It didn't have to be this way. I've seen this, my wife reminds me of this all the time. There's a famous picture of me with the Taliban leader, a reckless terrorist named Mullah Baradar. The president said, I want you to go meet with him. I want you to try and begin the process to deliver a more stable Afghanistan. And I want you to get our young men home from that place. But we always remember too that we had to do it right. We had to execute that well. We did. We, for 4 years, worked to build out a model that would get our young people home. We'd gone from 15,000 or so of our young men and women in Afghanistan to about 8,700, and we stopped and paused and we measured the conditions. And when the Taliban acted up and crushed them, right, we imposed real costs on them. And then we went to about 4,600, and we got NATO to pick up more of the operation. They had about 8,000 NATO forces alongside our 4,600, and we stopped. We made sure that the conditions were right. And we knew how to sequence it right. Civilians first, military last. This is like third grade military work. President Trump was unambiguous. Mike, I want you to get them home, but we got to make sure we get every American out before we do that. And so we then were able to get down to about 2,800 Americans, and we paused. And then America didn't give us the power to finish the mission. Biden team came in and they ripped up the plan that we had laid out on how to ultimately achieve the objectives that you had given us when you elected Donald Trump to be president. I want to take just a minute for we all to remember the families of the 13 who were killed as a result of the debacle of our departure. And I want everyone to make sure that tonight they pray for those Americans who are still trapped behind enemy lines in Afghanistan as well. All right. So how do we get it back? You all know the answer to this, but I want to give you Mike's theory. And what's great about this is my wife would always say, I'd be on the Sunday morning talk show with Chuck Todd. You're welcome. I never served in combat in the military, but I will tell you, Chuck Todd, on any given day, right? He doesn't value the same things we do. But I can remember too, it would always start, every Sunday show would start, Margaret Brennan, even Chris Wallace. Mike, Mr. Secretary, I want to show you this tweet from Donald Trump on Tuesday. Don't you all wish we had the tweets back? All right, I do. We were unambiguously clear about the things that mattered. We were putting America first every place we went. And the blessing I have today is for 4 years when I was on those shows, it was always serious business. We were working to get the remains of our fallen soldiers back from North Korea, and we did. We were working to free hostages all across the world. We did, and we didn't pay a penny to do it. Not one, not ever. My wife would say, Mike, you know, you should smile a little more. And I would remind her, this is serious stuff. It's really hard to smile when you're talking about all the trouble in the world. But tonight you get Mike Pompeo unplugged. I can now smile and remind you of the joy of the belief that we have in America, the greatness, the exceptionalism that we have in our nation. Don't ever let them convince you that we should spend more time reading the 1619 Project than the Bible. Don't let it happen. Don't ever let them convince you that our founders built a nation that was founded on racism. Indeed, it was founded on a very central idea of equality for every human being. And you should remind them that every major advancement for every minority community in America happened under Republican leadership. That theirs was the party that resisted the progress we've made towards equality. You all are watching what's happening in our schools. Don't let it happen. Don't let them teach our kids that junk. I get asked all the time, Mike, what scares you the most? What keeps you up at night? That's a reasonable question for someone who was a CI director and the Secretary of State. But I think I give them an answer that they don't expect. The thing that scares me the most is that we won't teach American history to our kids. If we get that wrong, we'll figure out Xi Jinping. Vladimir Putin's a bad guy. We'll figure that out. If we don't teach our kids about the greatness of our history, if we don't remember the conflicts, the sacrifice that Americans have made throughout time, I'm happy to teach all the challenges, all the things America has gotten wrong. We should teach the history of slavery. We should teach all of the flaws of America as well. But we should remind them, every one of them, that they have this incredible privilege, they have this blue passport, they are Americans, and that everyone in the world is envious of the benefit they receive because of the privilege to live in the United States of America. And don't forget this too. We know that we're the party that understands virtue, the virtues of gratitude and of faith. And that this nation was founded on an idea that said that the Lord gave us our rights, not some knucklehead in Washington, D.C. And that our virtues, and that the virtues of this Judeo-Christian nation are developed through God's grace, and they are the foundation of our republic. And that our virtues aren't represented by our wealth, but indeed our virtues are our wealth. We must stand on these central understandings. You saw a little clip in the video. When I was headed off to West Point, my father was excited. My mother was happy too, but you know, the little boy was headed off. I'd never been east of the Mississippi River in my life before. She was a young woman who moved from Kansas to California. She was a chain-smoking, tough lady. One of the most gracious human beings I had ever encountered until I came across my wife, Susan. She reminded me that with hard work and diligence, that if you tell the truth, keep your faith, then most days good things will happen. The video described her, said, Mike, you're a grinder, wear them down. I want you all to remember to wear them down too. You know, there's a couple of books out, I don't know if you know, there's a few people who've written about our administration. I have not troubled myself to read them yet. You can't miss a few of them in the headlines. Every now and again my name shows up. One of the stories that's recurring is that at some point I was talking about quitting the administration. Are you kidding me? Every minute of every day, you all gave me the incredible privilege to try my best to deliver security for each and every one of you and your family members all across this country. I was not about to give up a single minute of that opportunity. No one could expect that they would get such a privilege in their life. You know, was April of 2018, and I was briefing the presidency, our director, and he said, Mike, you come in here every day, we're talking about North Korea. Can we talk to them? And I said, yes, Mr. President, we have a way to communicate with them. He said, tell them you want to come see them. Roger, sir. When I go see them, what would you like me to say? Tell them I want to come see them too, but I want you to go first. Yes, sir. You know, it ultimately led. I left on Good Friday morning in 2018. I returned on a Sunday night so that no one would notice that I was gone. It's one of the few things that didn't leak in 4 years in our administration. There was an incredible set of meetings there where we ultimately got to a set of understandings with the North Koreans, and while we did not get them to denuclearize, we made progress. And I'll never forget how special it was on my second trip to Pyongyang, this time as Secretary of State. At about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I said to Chairman Kim, Mr. Chairman, the President expects that the 3 Americans that you are holding will fly back on my plane with me to the United States tonight. There was a long pause, a drag on his cigarette, and some conversation between him and Kim Young-chol, who was my counterpart. And he got up from the table, the meetings were over, I was headed back to the airplane to return home. He hadn't said a thing about whether he was going to honor that request. And as we got to the end of the carpet just before I hopped in the car, he said, does the President really want them to come back? I thought that odd. You'll remember though, Otto Warmbier had returned home in a condition where he perished shortly after his arrival back in the United States. We were very concerned. And I said, yes, Mr. Chairman, the President is expecting that they will be with me. So I hopped in the car, I went back to the airport, and I climbed up the stairs out of that beautiful white over blue airplane, and my team said, sir, they came and brought some vans about 15 minutes ago. And a senior State Department official hopped in the vans and went off to we didn't know where. And about 5 minutes after my return, the vans pulled back up. And out of those vans stepped the 3 Americans. It's still very emotional to me. They were ambulatory, they could walk around, their health looked really good. When I got on the airplane, we flew back, we stopped in Tokyo so they could get on a medical aircraft to travel back that we had prepared. And I called the President and said, Mr. President, I'm on my way, I'm out of North Korean airspace. We made good progress on your summit, but more importantly for today, I have 3 additional passengers that will be back in Washington with me. You know, it was about 2 in the morning. Some of you would have seen it, Joint Base Andrews. I walked in, my plane landed a couple minutes before theirs did, and there was the First Lady and all the cabinet standing there, and they gave me a big round of applause. We were all so excited. because we've done something great for those families and for our country. And the First Lady says to me, "What are you going to do next?" To which I responded, "I've been the Secretary of State for 2 weeks, I'm done. I am out." I tell that story because these are the things that America can do when we have faith and we believe in ourselves and we're prepared to take risks and to work hard. I had the opportunity. We're going to work hard. You should know, it seems like November of 22 is a long way off, that the race is a long ways away. It's our first chance to take a good swing at what President Biden has done. We must win back the House of Representatives. I pray we win the Senate. We must win school board races. We must win school board races. We must win delegate races. We have to win county commission seats. I want a conservative everywhere and always that you can impact the lives of Americans all across our country. Remember, people will be voting in less than a year. Right? Early balloting will begin sometime in September in many states. It's on top of us today. It's time to get to work. It's time to get after it. You all here tonight are part of that. When I was CIA director, I met this guy who was one of my heroes, still is. He was one of our most successful CIA officers. He was a former Air Force special operator who had come to the CIA after about 10 years of active duty in the Air Force. And I knew that I needed to do some work with the team at the CIA, that it was a very different team than the one that I would want. Remember, John Brennan was my predecessor. Yeah, you can boo, it's all good. And so we were scrambling to get the right leaders in the right place to deliver what I knew President Trump would need his CIA to be able to do. So I can never forget, I said to him, we had a set of resumes in front of us and we had done some interviews, and I said, "What do you think about this guy?" And he said, "Mr. Director, not a pipe hitter." And what do you mean? He said, "Not a pipe hitter." Pipe hitter. Pipe hitter is someone who just gets it done. There's a speed bump is never a mountain. They don't come back and ask questions. They understand the mission. They just get after it. And so this became our shorthand for the entire time. I'd look at him, he'd look at me, and he'd say, "Pipe hitter." And I want you all to go out and be pipe hitters. I want you all to never let a speed bump be a mountain. We know the mission. We know the work that needs to be done. Support good conservative Republicans. You've got pipe hitters all around. I met many of you tonight. Your National Committee men and women and your chairman, pipe hitters. Congressman Harris, total pipe hitter. And a lot of you think that the first time I ran for office was when I ran for Congress. It's not true. The first time I ran was for my homeowners association board. It was the beginning of the end. My wife thought I was crazy. But I was furious they were going to make me put shake shingles on my house. This was serious business. So just think, if any of you members of your homeowners association board, a couple of you, you may be the 74th Secretary of State. You never know. I was a pipe hitter on that homeowners association. We never had shake shingles. Do it at your PTA meeting. They're not going to give an inch. Fight for the things that matter to you and your family. When you go to the school board meeting, be clear, be crisp, be kind, smile, but make sure that they know that you've got the rage and fury of a parent who wants their kids taught the right things in the school and is going to demand it. You know, I was pretty lucky too as Secretary of State. I worked for an incredibly unique president who gave me every opportunity to make sure that America didn't lead from behind, but put our country first. We were making sure America was secure, not attending fun climate change meetings in Brussels and Paris. We knew that the things we did impacted the lives of each and every one of you, and we never forgot it. We were relentless. We were pipe hitters for the United States of America. You all know this. You all know this as well as I do here in Maryland. You all know that if you get it right,
that what we will leave behind us, the thing that we will bequeath to our children and our grandchildren and our nieces and nephews and all of the friends of all the children of our friends, that we will leave behind a nation that was as great as the one that we've had the incredible opportunity to grow up in. We can't mess it up. I am convinced we won't. For all the challenges, I've recounted a whole handful of them here tonight, for all the challenges that America faces. And for as difficult as this past 8 months have been under our leadership today, I remain convinced and committed to making sure that America has another 2.5 centuries of American greatness. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's, everyone in this room tonight, hop in the car. If you're driving by yourself, great. If you're with your husband or your wife, pick up 2 or 3 tasks that you think you can do to help move this conservative idea, this greatness of America forward. If each of you will do that and stay focused on that in the days and weeks and months ahead, I believe deeply that the Lord will continue to bless this great nation and that each of us will be blessed in having worked so hard to be a little piece of making sure that that happened. May God bless you, may God bless Maryland, and may God bless this great United States of America. Thank you all so much.